Oh, perfect. It pops up and tells you. Cool. So it's Team D here today answering the question, what lessons can be learned from cost overruns? So every project experience has lessons to offer. These lessons are discovered through lessons learned, the project review process, and other stakeholders' input and guidance. So if we just want to go around the room and each share a couple of lessons learned from the projects that we identified, I think that's a good way. And any feedback you've got, let's just give that as each person is discussing theirs. So Gracie, if you want to start.
Yep, sure. Hi everyone. I believe that one key in regarding the lessons learned is how important is the communication. I think it's a key part of the cost management because we need to ensure that the report periods are aligned with management plan and cost. It's important also to track the expenditures, the costs more precisely. And another point I would like to highlight the roles in the project, they have to be very clear. Otherwise, uh, can lack proper oversight, leading to, of course, cost overruns as well. And another point I would say is an adequate design, because I think a poor design can affect the planning and the estimation of the costs, especially um, if it's not clear, if it's not detailed. And I think in general, these are my three points to share with you guys.
It's good. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, you're muted,
mute.
Bianca.
Oops, thank you for that. You can see my mouth moving, but no noise. Thanks, Gracie. Chris, did you want to go next?
Nice.
Yeah, sounds good. So based on the case study that I did on Fiona Stanley, I've identified a few lessons learned. One of it is the planning, which is vital for the projects. So under planning, I have identified that planning with realistic budget and time frame. So that was a failure of that project. Also planning stage with good understanding to include SME if required. So that's another lesson learned from Fiona Stanley. The third one under planning is the thorough project business case to avoid gaps in planning documents. That projects have a lot of gaps because they didn't have a good understanding of the whole projects. So that attracted a lot of scope creep and obviously associated with a lot of costs. The other one was monitoring and during the control phase. So one of the problem they have is that they didn't manage and coordinate the coordination between the facility manager or the end user and the contractors. And because of that lack of coordination, which tie in with Gracia's communication as well, they lost a lot of time and causing a lot of delay. So those are the two main points that I got for lesson learned.
Great, thanks, Chris. So there's a couple of crossovers there, which is good.
Yep.
Your turn, Jaden.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of the ones that Chris and Gracie have mentioned, but I've also got a couple others that I would like to talk about that haven't been spoken about yet. Mainly being expecting the unexpected. So obviously when you have a project, there's going to be unexpected delays, unforeseen conditions. Maybe there's a change in law, maybe the weather, there's weather issues and it like destroys part of your project or whatnot. So that can be one of the detriments, and the lesson we can learn from that would be kind of like adding a budget for these kind of contingencies, whether it be like plus like 6%, 10% of the initial budget or whatnot. Another one I have is managing different vendors. So obviously in your project, you're going to have different material costs and whatnot, and thinking about where you want to supply those materials from can drastically increase or decrease your cost. So whether you want to get it from, say, A as opposed to B supplier, they'll have different costs and quality like ratios to them, and you kind of just have to pick and choose which one would be the best outcome for your project. And another one I have, it's a bit more what you call it, like not as likely, but kind of sticking to too rigid of a roadmap for your project. So in essence, kind of remaining too linear for the scope, the project scope. I feel like if you remain flexible and you kind of adapt, but rather than being too stubborn to change, then that can lead to cost overruns in the future as well. And it's kind of the main ones I had.
Some great points. I really like the one about almost risk assessing for your contingency. So knowing what your risks are ahead, so then your contingency can be based on that. It's a good one.
That remind me of the questions I did this morning for the assignment 1, which is the contingencies reserve and management reserve. What are the differences?
No, I haven't made it to that one yet. So the project I looked into was the Sydney CBD and Southeast Light Rail extension. So the budget overrun for that one was $3.1 billion and 2 years of time. What I found to be some issues were an unrealistic timeline. So the client awarded the contract to a contractor that said they could do it in a shorter amount of time for the least amount of money, but there was no independent review of that schedule or whether it was actually able to happen, and there was not really enough time contingency built in for the worst case scenario. So that caused a lot of cost in overrun of time there, so obviously labour, materials and whatnot, and also the design changes that happened after the scope had been developed and endorsed. So there was quite a number of big scope changes which caused a huge amount of cost increase. It's actually audited that a majority of the budget that was blown out, the 3.1 billion, was due to the design changes and the impacts caused by those. So the lesson learned with that is having a scope well defined, well planned, and that goes for the timeline as well. If that needs to be third party checked over to make sure everything's covered, then doing that as well. And part of that is also a clear responsibility of the client and the contractor. During this project fallout, the client was blaming the contractor and vice versa. So having those clearly outlined in the beginning should be able to avoid a lot of these blowouts.
Sounds good.
Does anyone have any other comments before we close out?
Well, I think everyone said what
No good.
I've got written down pretty much.
Yeah, I think we covered most of the core reasons for cost overruns. Excellent.
Yep, pretty good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll stop the
Talk to
recording
you
now.
soon. All right.
Bye.
And you stop the recording.